Lepo pozdravljeni na še enem masterclassu. Danes je z nami tudi Brecht Evens. Njegovo razstavo lahko ujamete v galeriji Kurna še kak mesec. Gre za razstavo litografij, ki jih je naredil in gre pravzaprav za svetovno premiero. Tako da toplo vabljeni v galerijo Kurna v prihodnjih dneh. Sicer pa je ob njegovem obisku izšel tudi prevod njegovega stripa v slovenščino. Gre za vaškega umetnika, na stojnici Stripolisa pa lahko najdete to njegovo delo. Nekateri pravijo, da je verjetno eden od najbolj trendi avtorskih ustvarjalcev. It's very good, because you don't understand me, I'm just flattering you at the moment. Zelo trendi v avtorskem stripu, tako da zdaj boste pa lahko videli tudi, na kakšen način se sam tega stripa loteva. Če imate kakšna vprašanja, pa seveda le vprašajte, mogoče jih prihranite za konec, pa seveda vas prosim, da počakate toliko, da pride do vas naša hostesa z mikrofonom, kajti dogodek je tudi sneman in bi bili veseli, da se lahko tudi vprašanja slišijo na videu. Brecht Evens, very nice to have you here with us, and let us see what you do.
Let's see if this works. That's good. Let's see if this works. No, not this. I'll do it like in the classical way. All right. And let's see if we can go full screen, all the technical tests now. Boom. Thanks for coming. I'll be talking a bit about aspects of drawing in the same order that I worked around these aspects when I did a workshop about 1 year ago in my hometown. I almost never do workshops, but then when I do them I get quite excited about it. So this is a student's drawing because the subject we started on was faces and figures, and then we went to places and we ended up in moments. So that will be the structure of this talk, which is 200 slides for 45 minutes, so let's just get into it. Especially these here. The exercise here for the students was to lay some random objects on the table and make faces with them, and then draw these faces. And this is a good example of what the results were. And the whole idea behind it was for the students to escape their style. Because if you draw a face that you first made as a little collage of objects on a table, then automatically you are doing different shapes than you usually do, no? And this is, some of you draw, maybe all of you draw. This seems to me, if you want to have something distinctive about the way you draw, the most important thing is the faces in the drawing. Anything else you do is anything else you do well is nice, but as mammals, as animals, I think we are programmed to look even a drawing into the eyes, no? So you have to be more careful than anything else about what you do with faces of characters and make them expressive and varied. And I was trying to push the students to some more extreme places than they usually go. Because a lot of people draw very well, but only fail at this, at the variation in their characters, which can be too monotonous. I also let them draw together, like start a drawing and have it finished by someone else, so their styles mix together. So this is a Annelies and Lisbeth drawing, for example. I like this one too, because one person started this with a yellow crayon, and then the other person put some details on it, and I feel like now you have this real ephemeral ghost-like figure because there are some details added to some almost invisible yellow line like this. I thought it was a success as a character. So this is students' work, all of this. The object faces. See, these are very nice, no? Some of these really look like, even though they can be made of like someone's wallet and someone's bracelet, they look like people you would meet. because drawing too realistically in a comic book where a face might be this size, it's you miss a chance at expression. You miss a chance at making it feel more like life, I think. I made them do bodies in the same way. The whole idea was to make them draw crazily, because they will automatically normalize it a bit afterwards if they would use this trick in the future. One of my own characters that had the most successful design idea was Panther, my third graphic novel, I would say. This Panther character changes all the time, and as long as he has the spots, the tail and the ears, you will recognize him as Panther. Here it's still pretty easy, but sometimes he transforms more dramatically. And this made the comic. This took away what sometimes is one of the most discouraging things of comics. I have to draw these same characters again and again, because this character was never the same. And I allowed myself this trick because the character is so much of a liar and sort of a magical creature who lies with his body. But actually you could do it with most of your characters if you allowed yourself. I also feel like I'm playing it too safe sometimes still. Some inspirations for Panther. Because he could change like this character who is pretending to be a children's book character for some reason. I could have this, the face on the right you see there is obviously inspired on this luck dragon Fuchur from The Neverending Story. He just keeps channeling children's culture for some creepy reason that we don't know. Another influence on this, Alice in Wonderland. Characters for my last graphic novel, City of Belgium. One of my main characters, I sort of found her on the cover of an older book of mine, on the cover of The Wrong Place. And I felt I wanted to play with bringing back some of the same characters in the same places. So I inspired myself on this one who's running around on the cover of the older book from 10 years beforehand. And the character, for me, works because she has some kind of question that we're going to ask ourselves when we see her. I feel like this is her key image. She's called Victoria, and she's surrounded by her sister and a friend, like this. And she seems to have had some kind of crisis recently, maybe a breakdown, because her friends and sister are very worried about her all the time. And this, to me, feels like the key image because they are protecting her, but their protection also seems to feel claustrophobic, no? So this character has some kind of engine, something that keeps us interesting, like we don't know if the friends and the family are good for her or if they are keeping her down when she should be out playing and being wild. But well, about the design aspect is, as you can see, with these scales and with this Nefertiti hair, she can easily be recognized from the back. It's maybe something to ask yourself if you design a character. Can you recognize it from the back? Can you recognize it if you really quickly drew it? And if the character is recognizable, that is most of the work. And that will give you a lot of freedom when you do the rest of the comic. I think The Simpsons are a good example of like strong, recognizable character design with this, where they took special care to have all the silhouettes be very different, you know? Marge's hair and Bart's hair and Lisa Simpson's star-shaped head. Another design for this book, some more. This character was called Buzz, and he's a bit visually inspired by Buzz Lightyear, the Toy Story character. So he has a helmet kind of head with no ears. There is no particular logic to that. Maybe just that his head is like a stone. Nothing new gets in there. He just projects and just has his own ideas, and he's a bad listener, so he has no ears. It can be as simple as that. A Haitian painting of a voodoo divinity called Baron Samedi, which inspired my character on the right there, who is very recognizable by this feathered costume that he wears all the time. Him carrying some toilet paper around on the way to a bar is a sign of that this character is suffering from depression, because that's when you disorganize, when you're disorganized enough that you would arrive at a date or a meeting with a friend in a bar with some toilet paper under your arm. Some other designs for this character, which I wanted him to transform a bit. By the middle of the book, he goes to some kind of transformation. So his red face, I was testing out some variations on it. The cowboy there has nothing to do with it. That was just me scribbling. Other inspirations for clothing in the book. This is such a beautiful drawing, this wasp with this color combination. Then my version is a bit clumsy, but still, at least I had the colors. This is a drawing from when I don't like to use the word style, but developing the way of drawing that I'm recognized for, so that's what you usually call style. The reason I don't like to say style is because style is everything that you repeat and that you probably are not thinking about anew, which doesn't mean your drawing always has to change, but the reason people recognize your drawings is because you're repeating certain things, no? But this was in a midway between the cartoony drawing style I used to have and the new, more painterly drawing style. So it still feels a little bit more comic-y, but I'm obviously trying out a lot of stuff. There's even in a way, some more freedom to it, the way that the water paint is making the lines below it a bit vague. I'm clearly experimenting. Every time you start mastering a material too much, that's maybe why it's good to mix a lot of materials, art tools. Every time you start to master it a bit too much, or think you master it, is maybe the moment where you start falling asleep when drawing. And to keep awake, it's good to change techniques and tools and to mix them together. As I'm telling you now, but I should more often tell myself this. I forget it for years. This is a typical way how I would construct a very busy, lively crowd scene. It's for my future book. And you can see that there are these random spots that are going to be people. But I'm laying them out a little bit like traps for myself. Like, okay, there's a spot here, so that's later on going to have to be integrated when I draw what is the finished drawing here. Or just my little guy above there, he's disguising himself by turning his coat inside out. But if you look well, maybe you can see it in all the characters, I think, but a bit more in some of these on the stairs. This red spot here was already there just now, and it's just something that I laid out for myself and that I then have to work around. And that gives some kind of liveliness and movement to this crowd scene, you see, before, after. Other characters for my next book. A small sect or secret society of children. It's going to be a psychotic Harry Potter book, you might say. Not actually Harry Potter, but Harry Potter-ish. Or a French Matrix. I have some low resolution here, I think. Maybe that gets better. Not sure what happened, sorry about that. This is me trying to do some, to experiment a bit myself with some more radical face designs, some more radical character designs for my next book. I'm trying to do what I also told my temporary students to do, is that try to design crazy, and then you will still, once your character has to be a movable character that you can see from all sides, and it has to be able to make coffee, that has to be able to drive a car, then you will probably still normalize it enough afterwards. But it's good to start from something a bit radical. I think we are back to image quality. So these are the more actual character designs for the future book, which I'm much more advanced on now, but I'm waiting till I'm ready to like show a lot of it for the new book. Maybe it has to wait until it comes out in a year or two. So the main character of my next book has a quite simple design defined by the wavy hair and this red spots in the middle of his face, almost like Japanese theater mask maybe, but it's something that can be expressively used and it will make him easily recognizable throughout all the book. Character designs for the future one. This was also a radical way for me to, quite a simple, radical way for me to have some variation in characters was to invite another artist I love. This was in the City of Belgium, my last one. And I wanted, she's called Nina van den Bemt. She's mentioned in the beginning of the book, the thank yous. And she made this drawing for me, this start of a page, on which I then started to add my sauce. That sounds horrible. It doesn't sound so horrible in Dutch for some reason. On which I started to adapt to my visual universe, maybe. There's something about her way of drawing people that more than I ever could, or I hope I would be able if I was awake enough. Her characters look a lot more drunk than mine. So I wanted her characters to be there in the end of a party scene in my book. So I added a page to the left to have a spread, and I started imitating some of her techniques, like because she used brown paper and like a little touch of collage like this, I started doing it too. And just, it's a quatre mains, you know, a four-handed piece of visual art. And also, as you can see, I'm right away putting some green paint there, and I'm gonna allow myself to draw on her drawing, you know. And by the end, I feel like it all fits together anyway. It all feels like one drawing. But this is pretty, well, this is almost, you might say, a desperate way of escaping your own style. It's actually delegating. I love doing this. The actual scan is a bit more orangey, as you can see. There was something wrong with my scanner then, I think. I noticed a bit late. But so this is a combo drawing. You have a lot of her style on the right, and then my less drunk people on the left. And that's almost like sequential storytelling, no? People get stranger the more you go to the right. I did my best, you know. I tried to keep up with her, but still my people look more sober. Another exercise I gave my students was, for the place assignment, was to start with some geometric shapes. And you can see the exercise very clearly with this student. She did it in the light brown, the sort of yellowish brown, is the first shape she made. And then I asked them to now make a drawing of a place onto it, but while ignoring entirely the shape you drew below it. So that's what she did in blue. And then I told them, phase 3 now is, okay, now you suddenly see your geometrical shape again that you drew in the beginning. How do you unite the two? And so she did this, placed this trash can and this building in exactly the same line. You know, did some other interventions like the way the building shines through. It's a bit like what I showed you earlier with the crowd scene, where I did some random spots that became people afterwards, you know? Just planning for accidents, planning for randomness. And I feel like the result is something quite interesting automatically. This was a tiny thumbnail sketch that's very beautiful. Something I told my students too was make small color sketches for your compositions and then be quite faithful to them. And that is a perfect example of something that I know that works and that I forget to do myself. But when I'm teaching, it's like, No. I know what can solve your problem, but I forget to solve my own problems with it. This exercise automatically made for more surprising or abstract and cubist spaces. There's something about it, no? This is very beautiful, I think. Mysterious, no? Also a good example. There's some strange kind of atmosphere to them automatically, I feel like. It's a shortcut. It's sort of a literal translation of a trick I do a bit unconsciously when I want to make complex drawings. It's starting it a bit like an abstract painting. I don't always do it, but I should do it more. This is a collage version of the same assignment, also by a student called Jenny. This is a drawing of mine. It's almost a bit kitschy in how much detail there is, but I did remember to fuck around a bit with the perspective. So it's we can feel a bit that we're on shaky grounds, that we're looking around maybe. That's the whole reason for cubism, no? It's to show us more than we could see on a photo. Because in real life, if we see someone, we might be passing by them and we see that's why the classical example of cubism is maybe these two eyes on one side of the face. No? We're giving you more than you could see on a realistic picture or a photo or a postcard. We're making you see true things. We're making you see all sides of things. And this can be done also in modest ways. Like here, this would be maybe a modest deconstruction of perspective. A space with a lot of geometrical shapes to make it feel more claustrophobic. I think these strong geometric motifs make it feel a bit like the walls and the floor are coming up towards you or closing you in. That was for Panther, this one. A crowd scene for the City of Belgium, where I got very... there's a big part of the book that takes place in the same restaurant, and I wanted there to be constancy. Which table is where, which kind of characters sit at every table. Because afterwards, every one of the three main characters disappears into the city and has very wild adventures there, or tries to. And that's when the spaces become less... that's when they become more cubist and strange and varied, and there's more strange things happening with the places. So I wanted this restaurant to be the one constant anchored place. So I even... some of these slides are not in order. I'll just talk about this then. This was my cartoony style that I had to abandon to make the wrong place. If I didn't have a strict illustration teacher then, my book, The Wrong Place, would have looked like this. But what she said was, well, this is an unfinished drawing, but you can see it's a pencil sketch on which I'm inking, like an actual comic artist, no? What she said is, look at this, your naked man, your car, your stone wall, they all look like they're made from the same rubbery substance. It's not badly drawn, it's just a bit boring. Try to mix up some textures and some materials. So I started mixing up textures and materials, but there was still something wrong. Because the interesting thing about how my way of drawing changed then is that I had a mission. I wanted to draw the magic of the city at night, you know, the bustling melting pot city. But this is not it. It's good that the phone building is a bit horrible anyway, no? But I'm trying something, it's becoming painterly, but it looks like toys. It looks like a mat you would lay out for your kids to play on with little cars, no? there is no sense of being in there. There's a sense just of being a giant looking down on it, and that's not the feeling I wanted. So this drawing was also unfinished. And then a friend of mine who was also a mentor, a bit older than me, longer in illustration, he told me this thing about, well, he drew my attention to my little color sketches I used to do before a drawing. And he said, like, do this, but on the size of your actual big drawing. So what you do is when you take your big paper, you also take a big brush and start with some strong, big shapes. Start working your actual drawing as if you're doing the color sketch, which is another way of saying paint, like a painter, no? Maybe. And that's what I started to try, and it started feeling better. And this was what I felt was my first good drawing, like my first artistically interesting drawing. So you think you can see the big brush strokes here, no? They're like this pink, red, and this blue. Automatically, there's a lot of transparency happening, and that's the moment where I realized that I could leave this kind of these rough things, that these textures and effects were welcome, and that this was how you could see the experience of being in a city with movement and sound, and you sort of, this you can fill in with feelings of sound and movement and life. The way that the roof of this car is white, as if there's a sudden flash of light on it, maybe from we don't know where. The way not all characters are detailed the same amount. Some characters are very vague silhouettes, maybe some are just spots, and then some are much more detailed. How some things are linear, but some things are surfaces without a contour. A healthy mix, something that keeps the eye attached. And alas, this and my other first good drawings, I lost them on a train. That's why now whenever I'm on a train, everything I have has my name in big letters and my number. Because, yeah, it was too bad. I was so proud of them, I was going to show them to someone in Holland. And yeah, when I was there, I have to show you. We never found them again. But I had a low quality scan of it, so it's still in the book. Architectural spaces became a fun way of arranging a page, you know. If there's architecture, it's quite easy to have a strong, legible composition. Later on, I had to find out how to do it with nature. But architecture always has strong lines, doesn't it? Very much an example of the making a lot of spots and then finding out what they're going to become. I mean, I knew it was going to be a disco scene, you know, but of letting a lot of different textures and randomness come in. I wonder if we maybe have some too much light here. If someone could look at that. Then we might see the projection a bit, the colors a bit more clearly. Pretty soon I was making quite complex kind of drawings. This one has a lot of, well, it's a really light and shadow drawing, no? Which I don't do so often anymore. I go more to color contrasts lately, but I still like this one a lot. It's one of the drawings that I'm keeping to myself for my own archive that I haven't sold. But it's a good example of the mix of what I call in French contreforme and then opaque painting. It's you can see it well. It's again a healthy mix of textures. You can see this lamp there, this yellow standing lamp. That's where I drew dark around the light. So there was some yellow ink. The shape was drawn out. Then I draw something darker around what the lightest surface is, and something even darker where there is an even darker surface. But so keeping the white of the page shining through, you know. The color, the lightness of the color comes from the white of the page. But next to it is this woman stepping into the swimming pool, and she, because this is something else, this is flesh, skin, She's painted in gouache, so she's painted light on a dark background. And I feel like having these two effects mixed in a drawing, different textures, and I too often forget it, can make a drawing more interesting too. I hope I don't crack this chair. A little design for the research drawing in a sketchbook for what has to be an infinite disco, but this is suffering from the toy problem we discussed before. So this is what it became. A very jazzy drawing, a very extreme example of this. You're confused, you're walking in the street, there are cars, there are lights. A drawing that feels like walking around somewhere, I think. A big influence on me at this stage was Georges Gros. It could have been Picasso, for example, but Georges Gros precisely did these bustling city scenes that I needed to see. One of the things is just what I needed was how to draw in a way that I can draw what's important big and what's less important small. If you draw a realistic space, then these people are tiny, no? But if you break it up enough, you can suggest grandness of space and still have your characters be legibly big. It's just, you know, even a Giotto would do this. I don't have an example of that. This is Georges Gros. You can see what I mean, no? The man and the woman and the buildings the same size. So he's just freely arranging his elements on the page and in order of importance, I would say. And twisting perspective and space so you can see many things at the same time. This is a drawing of the city with a lot of tricks. There are different horizons, different perspective fleeing points. There's some little... I was showing off a bit here because it's the beginning of the second graphic novel, The Making Of, where there's only one scene that takes place in the city before we spend the rest of the book in the countryside. I was perhaps a bit nervous about drawing nature, so I really put all kinds of tricks into the one city drawing I had. So there's like a point of flight, or I forget how we call it, under the balcony and above, and some other ones. There's almost a fisheye lens effect with these cars. So some exaggerated trick, so that even though these two cars and these people are at the same height in the drawing, you know, they're equally low, you still have a sense of this is closer to us just because it's made bigger with this fisheye effect. Like, we are obviously on this side of the street, and the other side of the street feels farther from us, but it's not respecting perspective. And everything is a bit X-ray and see-through. A way to make the Notre Dame a bit more interesting. It's like some light cubism. The Notre Dame, this was for a book with drawings of Paris. Notre Dame has a very flat facade, but I wanted to make it a bit more jazzy, so I broke the lines a bit, you see. It's a bit twisted the facade a bit, as if the cathedral is dancing a bit more. Also, this one, rare for me, is all real watercolor, because mostly I use color inks and gouache. Watercolor is a bit unpredictable in the way it dries. Sometimes you get some thick spots, some more opaque spots that I forget that they're still wet. But here I liked, and thankfully I allowed myself here to go dirty like this. Strange way to say it, but there was no mistakes were possible really. But so you see, it has a lot of raw texture, and that's from the actual aquarelle. Planning a complicated drawing. This is a drawing with the MC Escher kind of game going on, where the left of the drawing is a space seen from above, and the right of the drawing is a space seen from the side. but the space is continuous. And I'm showing you this to see that I didn't want to make, it's a 340-page book, and I didn't want to make a 1,000-page book, so I tried to, all the ideas I had, to compress them as much as I could into single drawings sometimes. Instead of making 3 of these on a row, to have one very calculated, thought out, and precise, which is a bit different from, I had a more improvisational way of doing things 10 years ago, I think. The process. So you can see this shape here, this gray shape, is going to be a rug. And it's a light gray now, we're surrounded by darker gray. Next there will be tables on it, where I kept the light gray inside the tables and drew this red motif around it. That's what I call the contreform technique, the counter shape, where you draw around something. It's basically not so different from coloring, but it's how you make something shine surrounded by something darker, for example. Which is very much happening with this lantern, of course, which you see. I seem to have made the tables yellow there. I made the tables yellow, but some plates on there still are the light gray, you know. Oh, again, the scan, a bit more buttery and orange than what we've seen, but this is the final drawing, as you can see, with scene from above going to scene from the side in profile. An impossible space. A drawing where I made it complicated or either very simple but very long-winded for myself to draw a building exactly as described in a French novel called La vie mode d'emploi, Life, a manual to life. Where he takes 600 pages to describe in extreme detail one building, all the different apartments and the book lying on next to the bed and all this detail. So this is a drawing where I did not choose any of the colors. This French author, who's been dead for a while, I just followed his instructions exactly. And this is also in the City of Belgium. This is a drawing is 1.5 meters high, so printed on the comic book size, it looks ridiculously tiny, you know. But it was one very, you might say, anal way of showing the endless complexity of the city. And the page serves so that you see one of my characters descending the stairway, while also seeing the whole rest of the building. So the restaurant, as I earlier mentioned, was a bit thought out like this, a bit planned to have some constancy. So I start on this kind of schematic. I noted like, here they're talking about this, here they're talking about this. What kind of people are this? As if I was a casting director or something. Little facades for the City of Belgium, facades of bars. A dialogue following the road. So it's a conversation in a taxi, so the dialogue is the road. It's a bit clumsy to read like this, but I think people manage. Medieval inspirations. So this is the same, this is from the City of Belgium, and earlier I showed a very jazzy facade of the disco. It was very much the experience of looking around, but in the more recent book, there are more symmetrical compositions, which I have no preference for jazzy or religious. It's just sometimes you feel like one thing and sometimes like the other. And here I felt like this more psychotically symmetrical, holy, infernal way of drawing. It's the same space drawn with a different kind of message and atmosphere attached. This is an extreme version of random spots. For this one, which was one of the drawings about Paris. I don't know if any of you who've painted might have had this experience of you make a drawing with colors and things, and when it's finished, you're okay, it's okay. And then you look at the paper where you tested your brushes, and that looks like a good painting, you know? That like, oh, what? So the one that I didn't look at, that's the good one. So for this drawing, I took one of these pieces of paper and drew a scene on it. So you can still see the randomness of the spots behind there is randomer than I could ever fake it. And it's satisfying. Again, an example of a drawing where I let a friend make a linear drawing of a Paris street, and then worked it over with my tools. And this was someone who doesn't usually draw, not like Nina van den Bemt, who is a fantastic artist. This was drawn by a writer, and then made into a proper painting by me. At some point in the City of Belgium, suddenly, in the morning, when the sun starts coming up, I suddenly respect realistic perspective, and actually went into my own street and took some pictures to have this suddenly coldly realistic moment where we walk down the street. And if you notice that the people in the street seem to be looking at you, it's because you're walking down the street naked. And in the end, we see the sun come up there, and we arrive at sea. But this feels like a morning, doesn't it? After all the Escherian cubist spaces, this is the freshness of the morning. Oh, this is still back to the night, where there's a bit of realistic perspective too, because to have let's say the lower part of the drawing has a realistic, is respecting some perspective. And this is because in these cities like Barcelona, where you stand on the roofs, and there's something very satisfying about the perspective lines and the way you're on this almost playground with the ravines in between the buildings. So this was a place where it felt good to be a bit less cubist, at least partly. And then the farther into the image we go, the more we go to the horizon, the more indecipherable the spaces become again. These little lasers on the roofs there are done with color crayon. There's some Posca in there, Posca markers, black ink, color inks, some gouache. It's a good all-round, everything mixed kind of drawing. Right. There was a sketch for the one drawing we saw earlier, where I just realized I had to break the usual straight lines a bit and make it shaky. And this is a very straight, more religious feeling drawing that has to be symmetrical to be scary and to be a face also, no? A kitchen that looks like an alchemist lab. A city space. Sometimes, or ideally, or most of the time, I make a proper sketch before I do a drawing, but it's something to consult on the side, because when I draw, this drawing started like this, on a new piece of paper, you know? But the sketch gives some ideas. For example, there's a guy, we have two characters in a taxi. The taxi is a bit see-through. And there's a guy slapping on the window of a taxi that's already occupied. So he has this stupid facial expression, this long nose. And that kind of idea comes when sketching fast. Some things that just feel natural and feel right. That's when you're not overthinking it before you're doing it. But so I wanted to keep we're going to see this guy reappear again, and he still has the stupid, simple face that he has in the sketch. Oh yeah, I'm placing some spots, just placing some confusion for myself to enjoy later. And since we're on a street, since we're going toward the horizon, I put some smaller spots toward the horizon, right? Because we're going to have smaller things there. It's as simple as that. And these are going to be integrated in the final smaller cars. We have a stream of red because we, well, pink maybe, pink-red, because we're seeing the tail lights of the cars on this side. A bit of a stream of yellow there because those are the front lights. More spots, shaking it up. The spots and things is a good trick to bring life into a drawing, I think. And here our guy appears in his boxer shorts. And his face hasn't gotten any more sophisticated than this, you know? Sometimes you have to keep the rawness of a sketch. And there you go. One influence on me is Charles Burkfield, who really makes landscapes come alive. That's Charles B-U-R-C-H Field. Me and Peter Cooper, if he's still here, we discussed him a bit. You can see here how every one of his watercolor paintings that he did in the countryside really play with light, but also with other aspects of the drawing, where these are not birds in the air, these are flying birds, right? Up. These are not electrical lines drawn the way they appear on a picture. These are electrical lines made to vibrate and to... We can sense the electricity in them. He's drawing vibrations and he's drawing experience instead of just drawing a postcard, no? Light falling on a tree, but actually falling on it. Oh, this is me imitating him a bit. The resolution seems a bit bad here, but... oh, sorry about that. It's a bit... But anyway, on the upper part, I'm emulating Burkfield a bit. With this, trying to make some kind of strong light drawing decision with these yellow outlines of the light spots. Little masters of disguise in nature. For the future book too. This is also for the future one. There's a lot of, it's going to be a countryside book again. Like the making of, but much more crazy. I don't know how I am for time. I'm probably running over, but I'll just go on. They will pull me off the stage when necessary. This is going to be a drawing of a moonlit night with constellations around the moon and two people on a little boat floating on the water. And I'm showing you this process because the end result is good and very detailed, but there was a moment along the way where I maybe should have stopped. I killed something by doing something else. There wasn't something because of the order. Okay, so we go like this: a very worked out moon, some reference material for doing the constellations, but here, because I'm drawing first these constellations, the little dots and lines connecting them, and then drawing shapes of the big bear and stuff like that, Cassiopeia, around them. I already have these silhouettes that look a bit like cutouts, and they're already interesting shapes that I usually would never draw, such flat shapes, so that they have some power. And what's going to happen is I'm going to detail and detail until these shapes disappear a bit. And I maybe should have stopped when all these shapes were still there, like these little children's art class cutouts, you know. And possibly the moment to stop might have been here. Maybe here. Maybe here. Maybe here. This would have been an interesting moment to stop, no? But I'm having fun doing all these little stars in the figures, so I'm doing more of them. And more and more of these figures become clusters of stars. And I also fill up, the whole sea gets filled up with, this might have been, I should have stopped here, I think. Should have not touched the sky anymore. And just maybe done something with the water. Maybe monochromous, some light green or something. And that would have been interesting and new for me. But instead, I went on, and then detail to water. And I think, yeah, that's the end result. Or the one we saw in the beginning there, because I have a bit of this. So it's good. It looks very professional, but don't we miss the... I feel like we miss the cutouts a bit. This. There you go.
I'm so sorry, maybe we will need to miss something more, but unfortunately time is running out.
Sure.
Thank you, Brecht, a lot. Maybe if someone has questions for Brecht at this moment. Yes?
Hi, I would like to know if you choose your colors very intuitively, or to like pursue something in the story. Like in Panther, you used like 2 colors when the characters, when the Panther was not there, and then you, it was very colorful when the Panther arrived. So something like that.
Yeah, in Panther the color is constrained. Also the drawing style is a bit constrained. Everything is in tones of red and blue when Panther is not there, and when he arrives he brings yellow, and then that means all colors can exist suddenly. And that was sort of a choice, so that when Panther is not there we also miss him, because we visually miss him, adding the color that's missing from the spectrum, you know. Even something else like this, I did not do a lot of transparencies like this, the way I would do crowd scenes in the wrong place, for example, because I was saving it only for at night when the room in Panther fills up with strange creatures. Then we could have these strange graphical effects. But for that to be a strange moment, I had to forbid myself to do it on other pages. So sometimes it's a conceptual way of doing colors. Sometimes it's just because I decided that the character is blue, and in the scene I need him to contrast with the background. Then the background is going to be a contrasting color, maybe a pink, a red, something else, some other tones. Sometimes it's so often it's a narrative choice. And then sometimes, maybe it should be more often, intuitive. This is the drawings by Fellini, the movie maker. I'm just showing it this because it's so beautiful. He sketched his dreams every morning. And I'm jealous of how fast and beautiful these are, and so spontaneous. And the colors, if you are feeling like you're using color in an ugly way, or if you have gotten this feedback, it could be interesting to try doing some silk screen, or more simply, just to limit your colors to, you know this already, to first practice with 2 dominant colors that contrast well amongst each other and that mix a bit, and then add some smaller things in other colors. But while letting 2 colors dominate, it's hard to ever make something ugly. And then that's how I first learned to use it. And then you get more confident and you get more intuitive. Yeah, so I would say most of the time intuition, except if it would confuse the reader narratively.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question?
Is the way you construct space in your drawings and in your comics, is it starting to affect that you actually perceive the world around you in reality or not? Do you ever feel like you are in one of your drawings?
No, not so much. I do appreciate pictures that I get sent by email, like, look at this, this was like your book, and like, that's sweet. It's fun to have some kind of, what's the word, patent on colored lights, for example, no? But there are many different ways I draw spaces. There are the busy cubists and very crowded images that would be the first to pop up if you Google me. But actually, I try to vary it a lot and have all kinds of ways of doing it. The only thing that changes perception is that I'm always shopping around a bit. No, so if I'm in a restaurant bathroom where there's something special going on with the mirrors, I will make a mental note of this. I will think of this is useful or interesting. This could be used. But no, it's not making me hallucinate living in my comics. I don't think. I might, maybe tomorrow I remember that you're right, but right now I don't think so. We have one there.
Hello, hi. So good to have you here. I have a question. Did you do any mainstream illustration work before you got famous? And how you managed to survive with doing only your underground stuff? I mean, before you got famous, did you do any really mainstream stuff for regular customers, or so to say,
yes,
commissioned work?
I've always done illustration, and I was lucky to. I was getting some small grants for making comics before finishing art school, so I could survive immediately and do some illustration work to add to this and make a bit of a name for myself without having to find this day job. So I've never had to struggle particularly to survive off it, and I've always done illustration up to recently. Right now I'm still doing it, but refusing most, except for maybe some particularly well-paid stuff to advance on the book. And these clients have been all kinds. So I'm not right now surviving off underground comics. I'm surviving still of illustration, doing posters for festivals, for example. I might even be doing some kind of, oh no, I'm not supposed to say that. Well, but I did things like a label for a pack of cheese, things like this. And I have to do some mercenary stuff, like I don't mind. If it's short work and well paid, then that buys me comic book making time. No? It's why I can do such a complex book now, because I did enough, let's say, prostitution to pay for my life for a year or 2, 3. But the books have been what gave me a name in illustration too. People come and find me because of what I do in the books, and they come and ask me for something a bit like the books.
Thank you, Brecht.
Thank you very much. It was very nice.